the one thing that is important to understand is like our people are paying for an email client and the competition is free. I mean, there's like more players that are trying to do like what we do, but like Gmail, Outlook, it's free. So like people are already paying for an experience. So to some extent, it's prosumer. It's like almost like a luxury good. And when you buy something that feels luxury, you have a set of expectations that are different. And the perceived quality is as important as the quality itself. So everyone like in the team like knows that our bar for quality is different. Make it work, not enough. You need to make it great. What is considered a bug, probably for most B2B SaaS company, like that would be just like a feedback. For us, it's a bug. Whether it is like, hey, we have like this flicking thing, like that's a huge bug. If it's like 1 pixel off, it's a bug.
Welcome back to Deployed. I'm joined today by an old friend and collaborator, Loïc Houssier. He's currently CTO of Superhuman Mail. And if you don't know it, Superhuman is an incredible email app. I've used it for years. It's one of the few products that I tell people about all the time. So it's really fun to get to talk with him about what they're up to, what they're building. They've been doing ambitious stuff with generative AI for a couple of years now. And email is a complicated space. You know, Loïc talks about how it's just a super high dimensionality problem. And when it comes to doing things like evals and figuring out quality, he shares just some really helpful practical insights for other engineering leaders and builders. For instance, like how they get into some of the hardest problems from their founder's inbox in order to figure out whether their AI features are doing the right things. We also talk a bunch about what they're doing internally with coding agents to build faster at Superhuman. It's on everybody's mind these days, and it's a great conversation with an experienced engineering leader just to hear how they're approaching the problem and scaling things across their organization. So with that, we'll jump in. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, I'm here with my old friend, Loïc Houssier, who's running engineering for Superhuman Mail. I'm going to let him tell you more about himself, but Loïc, welcome. Thanks for jumping on and doing the show with us.
Thanks, Ian. Feels cool, like to be on the show with you. Reminds me of like some good old time. So about me, French, living in the Bay Area, head of engineering by trade, done some CTPO role from time to time, and which is interesting in this world where product becomes the bottleneck to some extent and not eng. We might have like some opportunities to talk about it. Background in security in France, and slowly moved to like B2B and then B2B2C, and now like working on the prosumer app, which is kind of like a nice trajectory going like more and more toward the front end and the user experience. So yeah, and I have 3 kids. Happy dad.
Yeah, that's the fun part of life. Well, it's great to see you again. And yeah, for people that don't know, Superhuman Mail, it is one of the few products that I tell somebody that they should use it once a month, and I have for 4 or 5 years now since I first became a customer. It's just an incredible piece of software. I was using it before you worked there, and I continue to use it enthusiastically. So well done to you and your team for what you're building. Tell us a little bit more about like, you know, how you ended up at Superhuman, what you guys are building. Like for folks that don't know, what's the talk track on what you're up to?
Yeah. So interestingly, I joined like a year and a quarter ago, something like this. And AI was like coming strong. It was mostly a promise. It was not really like something that was so impactful as today. And kind of like trying to read like the sign on the wall, like the writing on the wall, like, okay, what's the next moat? Is it the technology? Is it the models? Is it something else? And I do believe that it was something else. And it's probably around user experience, because right now it's pretty easy to build an okay product or an average product. Building a great product is different. So what makes the difference between a great product and an okay product? It's not the feature set. It's not the tech. And there's something else, the product taste. And so we worked together, and like after we worked together, I went into the product management space, trying to understand how PMs are working, how PMs are really thinking about like building a product. And already it was a way for me to get closer to the what rather than the how. And when I discussed with Rahul, the founder, I was blown away by the vision, blown away by, of course, his product market fit approach to things, but blown away by the way he was thinking about the user flow and how the user is kind of like flowing into the product. He has a past in game design, and I'm a gamer as well, so I could relate to, and we can talk about it a bit, but like, it was really interesting how he was thinking about the user as a player and not as a customer. And that approach, I was like, holy cow, like, I need to understand that. And the more I was talking with people, like in the leadership at Mail, at Superhuman Mail, the more I was seeing both this intensity, like they want to have like the best product ever, but also like the level of care for people, being users, customers, but like the people inside, like the teams. And having both is very uncommon. You usually have the care, but like ambition and like intensity, maybe not. Or you have the intensity, and then it's hard to care about the people. And we have both. And I'm like, oh, damn, that's for me. So it's been a year and a quarter, and I'm still running high.
That's cool. Congrats. It's always awesome to hear people land in the spot like that.
And funny enough, the first time I heard a product, sorry to cut you off, the first time I heard about the product was you. You suggested me to use it at the time. So closing the loop today.
Awesome. I didn't even realize that, but that's great. Yeah, I mean, I really like, I can't imagine doing email without it. So, tell me more, like you mentioned how impressed you've been with Rahul and his vision and like the idea of, treating a user like a player of a game. Like I could imagine people being, cynical about hearing it that way, right? Like, overly gamifying a product can be a bad thing. But I've always felt this from Rahul too. Like by the way, he's one of the best CEOs out there in terms of sending product marketing emails. Like I've gotten emails from Rahul for years. They're always super thoughtful. They're well written. Like I have felt the love as a user. But like, tell us more about what that vision is, why it's a good thing, like how it doesn't come off as the wrong kind of gamification.
So before like providing like some key examples, it's not gamification. It's game design. It's different. Gamification is very negative, almost toxic. Game design is like borrowing some of the principle of the game leveling, like how to design a good level so that people feel good about it and so that they have like some stuff along the way before the end of the level to still enjoy the path and then have this kind of like feeling of like a dopamine or like, oh damn, I finished that level. Perfect example for that is when you reach what we call inbox zero, which is this state where you don't have any mail anymore. You have this very nice splash screen, HD 4K image that is usually
changes every day.
Changes every day. And when you have this moment, you're like, okay, I've done my email. I'm done. I did it. And this is borrowed by like I would say the game level. Like there's an end state. Like there's a moment where you're like, I'm done for today. Not good. So just that is kind of like the end game of the level. But along the lines, there's a lot of like small stuff that you can see. If you're a bit nerdy, there's a lot of Easter eggs, for example, that you usually see in games and all of that. But so, for example, there's some Fibonacci references when you reach a certain amount of email being sent. There's like some small messages like this when there's always something. And when we think about like, I would say that the features, we are always trying to think about like the experience. I'm like, okay, that looks good. How can it look great? Like I'm pushing a bit like the limit. So this is flowing. The other piece that is also key to what Superhuman is today and why it's so successful. When you're working on a game, and like you're playing with a game, you expect like you turn right, turns right. You jump, it jump. And you don't expect any lag. The worst thing that can happen to a player is like the game lagging because it's frustrating. Bring that to the product. Like we cannot be slow because every time it's slow, you start getting angry. You're like, damn, why should I wait? So we have this rule, like a technical rule, which is like everything should be under 100 milliseconds, sometimes 50 milliseconds, which is a strong rule. And there's implication on the architecture and all of that. But all of that is to say everything feels instantaneous because I don't have the time to wait. No loading screen. And we can talk about AI and the impact of AI in this because There's some latency there.
But a lot more than 50 milliseconds.
Yeah, exactly. But that's how I would say this game design, I would say, was infused into the product. And we always try to think about like, what is the user flow? Like we were like talking about like the job to be done, but like between the moment you start and like the moment you end, what is the flow? Is that nudge that you're showing to the end user something that is helpful for them to achieve the end goal? If not, don't do it. So trying to be highly protective of the player flow to get to the end of the level, and just like subtly nudging if you see something needs to be done differently, rather than being very annoying and front and center, because that will ruin the game, basically.
Yeah, that's cool. You're the second guest on this show. Our friend Nathan Sobo from Zed, the code editor, has talked about some of the same things you're talking about. Like it's why they build a native Mac app. They care about things like, frame rate for their code editor. And it just feels so good and fast, but it also takes a kind of a game design mindset to build like that. So, you mentioned AI. That's why we're here chatting. Maybe a good transition. Tell us more about what you all are doing in that space. And maybe you could start with like that, higher level product thinking, right? You've talked about there's a game to be played here. You've talked about like really having a high bar around taste for the product and really principled decision making. How has that flowed into what Superhuman Mail is doing with your various AI features for your customers?
At the end of the day, there's two ways to talk about AI. AI helping us to build, I would say, faster and better, and AI as like a tool to like reach like the objectives that our users have, like in the game.
We should talk about like, both of those. But yeah, I was asking more about the latter.
Yeah, and so inside the product, we've always focused on delivering like the end game, which is like you finish your day and you've treated your email and you feel good. So that's at the end of the day, like that's the goal, is like you feel good at the end of the day because you've treated everything. With AI, like it gives us like a lot of ways to get to it faster. Already, like people using Superhuman, you've seen it, like someone that is living day in, day out, like in their emails, founders, especially, but like C-level in general. Emails is a place where you spend a lot of time. A lot of thinking, whether you are like crafting an email, whether you are like responding to an email, whether you are just triaging things. And over time, Superhuman was like really good at making sure you focus on what is important for your day, with like different splits and like pushing stuff like on the side. With AI, this classification becomes, I would say, easier, but it becomes also like easier to personalize for people. If you're like a C-level in HR, the type of alert or things that are important to you might be different than someone that is a CFO working on like fundraising with the CEO and all of that. So making like AI is allowing us to be like much more personalized. That's the first piece, to triage things the right way. And so for example, like one of the features, like you can create custom auto labels. Like everything that is coming from my board, as vague as this, please put that into that specific split because I want to spend all my Monday morning focusing on that.
Yeah.
Before,
and those are kind of like a prompt, right? Like the way that you build that is kind of write your own custom prompt.
It's a mix because sometimes you want like prompt is like always like 99.9% like sure. But sometimes you know that, hey, everything that is coming from at X16Z, please.
Strict rule. Yep.
So it's complement. You have like a kind of like this very subjective way to describe things, and you can complement with like some very specific rules that are much more like I would say easier to catch. So it's a mix. And we found it to be like pretty useful. So that's an example. So for example, like I get pitched by a lot of companies, and there's like a specific pitch where I want to look at from time to time. So I have a split with my pitches. I have a split. I used to have, so it's interesting. I used to have a split for my newsletter. I receive a ton of newsletter because this is the way I'm consuming the content. Like the deep thought process, or like the people that are doing the work to try new stuff and provide their perspective. But like I figured that I never found the time to read those like 20, 30 newsletters that I receive every week. So what I've done is like, okay, everything that is a newsletter, tag it, archive it. I don't want to see it. But I have a meeting every Friday, 4 p.m., where I basically use Ask AI, which is our adjecting framework that is able to do semantic search and on your emails that will basically provide you with like, hey, this week, this is what is important based on everything you received. And you have the sources. You want to deep dive? Click on this email from that person. Their perspective seems to be like a bit thought-provoking.
Interesting.
So much more time won, and I would say I don't have the FOMO anymore.
And you said you schedule that as a meeting at 4:00 on Friday, like it's a meeting for yourself to chat with Ask AI?
Exactly.
That's funny. That's cool. It seems like there's a product opportunity there, Loïc. Like, can you work that on a schedule and have it send you an email summary?
Yeah, no, definitely. That would be like, but again, like there's a difference between like the push and the pull and how you want to consume and all of that. And I love to be very like organized in my day. So like, I don't want to just have like another email that I need to look at. I want this to disappear and have my dedicated time where I know I will pull the content at that time, because I know that my Friday afternoon is like relatively free from the execution of the week and all of that. So it's a good moment, but it's a good point.
That's cool. I'm curious, like maybe a little bit of a hard question, but it's just a hard problem. Like I think one of the most ambitious things that you all have tried to do is build auto drafts. And, the experience as a user for people that haven't gone through it, like imagine like logging in and there's a draft response to the email ready and waiting for you. It seems like just such an ambitious problem to me, because not only do you need to, get the user's tone of voice and the way that they write correct, because like, needs to sound like them. And I can imagine how you do that, but you also need to have like so much context about what the right things are to say and, anticipate their goals. Like, that was bold, right, of you guys to do that. I'd love to just hear a little bit about, how it's gone, how you've approached it. Like, how have you tried to make that work? I just imagine it's a hard problem.
It's not an easy one, but it's like a very interesting one, because this is where our like users will win the most time. If you have like the third time someone is asking you of some variation of the same question, not exactly the same. So you cannot use a snippet, which was like the old way to have like auto draft. Is like you have a snippet, which is like a canned answer that everyone is always asking about the same and everything. You use that. So that was not AI at all, but that was a way to accelerate the, I would say, the writing of a response. Right. With auto draft for response. So for one, yes, we need to have the knowledge. So we need to index your emails. We need to have the history. For now, limited to emails, but we have this context. We also have like a knowledge base. So you can add documents. Maybe it's your product sheet. Maybe it's your security, like a white paper. Maybe it's your, company story. Maybe it's like whatever like knowledge that you want to keep that is very stable. You can configure that. And right now we use that, and we do voice and tone, like some of few shots, depending on like the person you're like replying to. But that was kind of like the V1 that we basically provided like a quarter ago. There's a V2 that is coming that is like much more agentic, that will be able to do like a full search on the web, that will be able to, I would say, do more cool stuff, but like takes more time to craft the answer, but something that would be like more meaningful. And we're testing it like internally right now, and I'm blown away by the work that has been done.
That's awesome.
But yeah, to answer your question, there's two aspects to it. Is like having the right content. For one, you need to have it. Two, being able to retrieve the right content. And three is like being able to answer questions across different dimensions. So when we talk about evals and all of that, I don't know like how much you want to get into the details, but we had to somewhat reinvent the way we define quality. Auto draft for response, like the set of questions that you receive over email, like the number, like the dimensionality of the space is huge, because
super high.
super high. So we started with stuff that were like relatively easy to do, to just like understand how we can be providing some value. One was like, hey, what about your availability? Can we meet next Thursday? We have access to your calendar. We understand how you meet and everything, like relatively easy to provide some slots. Cool. Done. Check. Good values already. Or you have an admin for such, I would say, reach out because you're a CEO, big company, you have an admin managing your time. So boom, we provide this auto response, like this response for scheduling, and you have your admin automatically CC'd with like the right text and all of that, and you don't have to care about it. Still a human in the loop because we want you to send the email. It's not automatically sent. That's kind of like a hard rule for us for now.
It's an important one to get very right if we're going to start doing that, I can imagine.
No, exactly. And we have this rule, like as part of the game design aspect that we mentioned earlier. Raul has like ingrained in the company culture that our users, they should not look like a fool. If you send an email in their name, or if you lose an email, they can look foolish because they didn't reply in time and whatever. So there's a hard rule here. So there's a type of bug which is like look foolish moment. And those are like P0 that we need to target. So the first piece was like scheduling. Another one that we've done that was relatively easy was about like nudging. You basically send a request to someone. The person is not coming back to you after 2 days. Boom. Auto don't have to nudge the person. Hey, did you have the time to look at what I asked? That one is easy because it's just taking like the question on the request and kind of like nudging it. So fairly
That's the
easy.
one I use most often personally for what it's worth. Like the auto reminder a couple of days later and the draft there. Those are the ones that are the quickest yes for me as a customer.
And wait for the next version. If you're used to like the quick send, like the quick replies, those one will be agentic based, and you will have like 3 options that are really thorough and should be of like beautifully done and high quality. Hopefully, you let me know. Coming soon.
But yeah, you're getting to some of the like, I mean, let's stay on that thread because I think you mentioned evals, like you mentioned the challenge of getting this kind of high dimensional problem right. I think there are a lot of people listening to this show that are building AI products. They're trying to build agents, and like there's kind of 2 rough categories, right? There's very narrow dimensionality problems, right? You know, we're going to take every call center transcript and post-process it with, you know, a set of prompts. You're going to do it 1 million times a month, right? You know, dimensionality is relatively low. And then, you know, email is one of these ones. Coding agents is another one where it's like, I don't know, you can kind of ask it to do anything. Theoretically, anything shows up at the front door. How have you gone past those, like, you know, kind of the low-hanging fruit, scheduling, auto response, to handle the more complex stuff? I'd be fascinated to hear you talk about, like, how do you even decide what's in your eval data set? You know, how do you decide what's representative of that high dimensional space? How do you decide what quality even means when everybody's got their own perspective? It'd be cool to hear you talk more about it.
Yeah. So we love to like first principle approach. We love to take like, hey, I have this question and I need this to be answered. What is like the set of problems that is coming from there? One query that is pretty famous internally at Mail was like Raul trying to ask AI something like this, almost quoting, "Oh, I remember I was chatting with a contractor 3 years ago. What was the type of wood that I was looking for my coffee table?"
Right.
Raul receives like thousands of emails every day. So you have like a set of complexity, which is, so we call it like, so one of those dimension or like type of problems, like the needle in the haystack. How do you make sure that across that huge amount of emails, he had like a lot of contractor work, and among those contractor works, like you need to find the one email that is talking about the wood and surface like the type of wood that is looking for. So usually it comes, to answer your question, we usually start with like one crazy query, and then we start to abstract of like the type of problems. Another one, how much time did I spend in Waymo last month?
Yeah, interesting.
That's a very interesting one because you need to surface all the Waymos that you're doing. Oh, doom. Like if you're a heavy user, all of a sudden you need some level of pagination in your rack system. and you need to be complete. You need to have everything. And once you have them, you need to look into the email, abstract the duration of the trip, and then do some calculation. And managing dates, like you probably know that, like dates with LLMs, it's like it's not a really well solved problems. So you have the problem of dates, you have the problem of like getting the information from those emails, and you have like the problematic of like pagination of like a huge I would say set of data. So
yeah,
always,
and like the query needs to know it's not just a, you might do top K kind of as a legitimate retrieval step in some cases, but now you want everything, and somehow the query needs to be interpreted the right way.
Exactly. And then we had some issues about when you have those long queries, like it takes time for the agentic framework to go through all of that and process. And we started to notice some different agency from the agentic framework, like the will to go further and like constantly asking you and all of that, which is a burden. So like you want them to, no, you're good. Like keep processing. So the agency part was another problem we had to solve for. So to answer your question, it always comes with like the biggest users, like Raul has a database of emails that's like just crazy. One of the biggest email users. So good data set. And always like those 1-2 queries that are coming from like people who are like, hey, how do we solve that? And then from that, we abstract the different dimensions. And then once we have those dimensions, we do like, we do like synthetic environments, and we do like some, I would say synthetic queries to basically build our evals instead.
Interesting. And it sounds like, this is important for people that are thinking about email, just from a trust and security standpoint. You're mentioning that you're building up your eval data sets from Rahul, your CEO. Email touches a lot of stuff. Like, how should people think about the way that you handle privacy in the system? And I'm guessing you're doing a lot of these eval data sets from employee emails, but want to give you space to talk about it.
It's only from employees. So we don't use, I would say, our customers unless they basically provide the feedback and they give us a go to use their specific use case for us to be used. And so typically, like when you think about our evals, there's like the golden queries. Those are the queries we would use in demos or talk about in customer presentation. Those are the ones we need to harness the best. Then there's a second set, which is the kind of like the internal people queries, like real data set, real people. So run with my account, with Raul's account, with like everyone's like internal at Superhuman mail account. Those are real and like real. And then there's like the synthetic piece through the different dimensions to make sure that we cover everything. We have to be serious with security. Interestingly, we are pulled up market. So we were pretty famous to be like the best email client for founders, for VCs, and early stage startup. But those startups, they get acquired at some point. So now we start to see like those big players basically saying, hey guys, like we got this company we acquired. They don't want to let go their email client. Let's talk about security now. So we are building like bring your own key. We are building like, I would say the set of like typical enterprise features that I would say customer cares about.
Maybe like while we're on the topic, can you talk a little bit more? Like you mentioned bring your own key, but how do the models work? Like, are you doing stuff on device at all yet? Like what's your approach to inference?
It's very diversified. So I was talking about like so we have auto labels, like pitch, like identifying that something is a pitch. That's an auto label and it's standard across the board. Pitch, news, like whatever, like those are like built in the product. We basically build like BERT models, and those BERT models run on an inference. I don't know if I can name like the people, but we have a good relationship with
stuff private. But yeah, whatever you want to.
Okay,
don't share things you don't want to share.
Infrastructure provider that is not one of the GAFAM, but specialized in AI inference in like a dedicated clusters. So for those BERT models, we get there. For some of we have some fine-tuned models for custom auto labels. So which are the ones that you are providing? Like we do that in a specific way. There's some open source model that we use and run as well, and a bit of Claude and OpenAI for like some of the most tricky pieces. So pretty diversified. When it comes to on-device, this is really interesting because we talk with YC companies and all of that, like how to make even semantic search work on device. Our people, and you've seen it, like whether it is on desktop or mobile, you take the flight, maybe like the Wi-Fi is spotty. How do you want to have like a great experience? Today, we were like offline first before AI. Everything was offline first. You were searching your emails, you were searching or like wanting to reply, or you could do it offline. Great. Now, if you want to use Ask AI, for example, to do something that is more meaty, how can you do some version of that without the network? So we're thinking about it. We're thinking about like how we can play a bit more with like on-device PCs for that, and also for like speech to text on mobile that is coming soon.
I went both ways. I went text to speech for email as well.
I want my emails coming from you being like read aloud with your voice. That's my dream.
That sounds a little creepy, but it's not a bad dream. I appreciate it. That's cool. Maybe like to just kind of close this section, and then I want to talk about how you, like the other side of, we talked about AI and development, like how you all are building with AI these days. But if, we hit a little bit of the inference, like the mixture of models where you've got, SOTA stuff for, the complex tasks, and you're doing some fine tuning and some BERT, but all this is on the path to, how do you deliver a really high quality, loved user experience and product? You mentioned a little bit about evals. We talked about how you're gathering that data, but take us through like just a day in the life, right? Like if you were to think about like what determines quality, how do you answer that? If you were to think about like what your team does when they find bugs or issues, how do they fix them? It'd just be interesting to hear you talk about, with such a complex domain, how you all are operationalizing the work of making these systems feel really good for your customers.
The one thing that is important to understand is like our people are paying for an email client, and the competition is free. I mean, there's like more players that are trying to do like what we do, but like Gmail, Outlook, it's free. So like people are already paying for an experience. So to some extent, it's prosumer. It's like almost like a luxury good. And when you buy something that feels luxury, you have a set of expectations that are different. And the perceived quality is as important as the quality itself. So everyone like in the team like knows that our bar for quality is different. Make it work, not enough. You need to make it great. What is considered a bug here, for more, I would say probably for most B2B SaaS company, like that would be just like a feedback. For us, it's a bug. Whether it is like, hey, we have like this flicking thing, like on the right, like when in some specific, I would say interaction, that's a huge bug. If it's like 1 pixel off, it's a bug. So we pay a lot of attention to pretty much everything. Now the question becomes like, how do you operationalize that? Because you still want to build a product. You want to provide values to your customers. I mean, for one, every teams have their like objective every quarter in terms of like number of bugs per engineer that they need to tackle. And we started recently to implement like the quality week. Sounds silly, but it's working like crazy. Every start of the quarter, which is usually like the first week post-planning week, the design are not already, we're still kind of like framing what we want to build, all of that. So it's a week that was usually not the most efficient of the quarter because you're not exactly ramp up into the project. So like, okay. So like we have a week of low efficiency. How can we make it like more efficient? And we basically say, okay, that's the week we don't focus on project. No timeline, no GA. Of course, if there's a fire and all of that, we'll take care of it. But like that's the number one priority is the bug. Let's focus on the bug. So this is reinforcing the fact that we do care about it. It's kind of like building the bar from the get-go. First week of the quarter, you were like fixing bugs. So you know that you don't want your next week of the next quarter to have like silly ones. So like you really work with a higher bar during the quarter. And most importantly, I guess, is that this is the perfect time for our engineers to take a step back and think about how they work. When you're working on the project, you have a timeline, you have a customer that is waiting for like something. You don't have like you rush, like you're in your flow. You don't want to spend too much time thinking about the way you use Cloud Code or Cursor or whatever. You're just like, hey, this is my flow. I know it. I don't want to break something that is working. I know there's a potential new baseline, but I don't have the time to take the hit on my velocity to get to that new baseline. So this week is like just made for that as well. Like, hey guys, there's no real objectives in terms of number of bugs. We want to do like great, but like take the time to reflect. Do you have the right skills? Like in terms of Cloud Code, do you have the right setup? Do you have the right MCPs? Do you have like your linear MCPs, your honeycomb MCPs? Like how do you build stuff? Like, is the repo well done? Try to make it better. And incredible, the before and after that week, incredible. Not only from like a pure, like how is it working, but like even the mindset of people.
That's cool.
It's amazing.
It feels like the way you just described it, there's a lot of like, everybody go figure out your own workflow. But with all the stuff happening with just progress with agentic editors and coding, like, is there anything that you all are doing org wide or just like practices that have bubbled up from people's workflows that have become a widely adopted thing? I'm curious how, your team is, what's standing out to you that you feel like you all are just doing really well or that you figured out to build faster with agents?
Maybe just looking back a bit, we did one thing that was interesting. And so like, I think it was Q1 last year, like we were starting to see like all those like different ways to build stuff, being Cursor, being Codex, being like whatever, like it was starting to pop up. The first thing that we said was like, hey, you know what? We cut the headline, like we remove like all the blockers from a corporate standpoint. Process to get security approved, 24 hours SLAs. Budget, don't care. You want 3 subscription, do 3 subscription. We don't care. We won't waste time there. So that was the first quarter. And it was great to create this sense of urgency. And then we switched to a guild model, like a pretty typical guild model where the people that are just curious about it and want to get to the frontier of it, we are providing their feedback on what was working, in what context, for what language, for what IDE, and slowly like converging to a golden path. So right now we have somewhat of a golden path, and people are converging because not everyone wants to be always trying the new thing. Because like the cognitive load is like pretty heavy, but you have some people for them, it's like exhilarating. They love it. They want to try new stuff and all of that. So we have this mix of people that are ingesting stuff and providing a condensed, I would say, set of things that are working. So for us, what's working is like every repo, and we're mostly monorepo or like big repos. So like, we avoid like microservices and like things being spread out. So like mostly mono repos. And for each repo, you have like a dedicated like set of agents, include like rules of what's working. And like, hey, for us, be careful when we think about like design. We always check this and this and this. So we've harnessed a bit things. And we do, so funny enough, where we have those AI wins that we need to talk every time during like the, I would say EPD, I would say meetings and all of that. But again, it's not enforced. It's a golden path. We provide something on the shelves that is working. You're a PM. You don't want to set up Cloud Code because you're not a terminal person. Hey, this is the way to use Codex or Cloud Work in our context and all of that. So we're trying to do that to enable people that are not maybe like super interested in the how it's working, but just want to get shit done.
That's cool. I mean, you've been pretty open about this. You and I are in similar boats here. Like, your background wasn't in AI and ML along the way. Just as a leader working in this space, like you've clearly ramped up a lot. What have you done to get smart? Like, I'd just be interesting to hear you talk about your personal journey to build like the mental models that you have and the practices you have, and maybe like share a suggestion or two for the highest leverage things you found.
That's a good question. there's a trick, like my background is in math. So I did a lot of cryptography and like linear algebra I have some of the basis that is like the foundation of like the LLMs. I got some experience, I would say back in the days, like 10 years ago, something like this. No, maybe a bit less, like DocuSign, where we were like doing some OCR, some NLP, but like it was my teams. It was not me. I was not in the details. So like sure, on a deck, I couldn't understand. One thing that I found like very, very interesting was at first I used like Notebook LLM. I basically shipped like providing the papers, like the foundational papers, like attention is what you need, blah, 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 like all of that. And to just get a sense, like explain, get to the root of it, like try to avoid the hype and like, what is it about? And then I have some mathematical backgrounds. I'm like, okay, so it's not sorcery. It's it's a bit more than that, but like some matrix multiplications and all of that. Okay, I can understand some pattern descent. Like, okay, I'm ish. I get it. And then now, like we have access to Cloud Code. We have access to ChatGPT. Like those are the best like teachers, because they can adapt to you. You can say like, no, use metaphors. Like I'm a metaphor person, or like I'm a visual person. And every time there's a new concept, like open cloud is coming and everything. Like what the hell is open cloud?
It's just a big lobster, Loïc. Your visual metaphor was just a big lobster.
Exactly. But like there's so much that you need to, like I need to have an assistant kind of like regurgitating everything that is coming. And the second piece is like, I'm storing that in my second brain. I know you're an Obsidian user as well, but putting all of that into my second brain, just the fact that, and now I'm kind of like cheating a bit because I don't write everything anymore, but I try to have that in my Obsidian domain. And it's helpful because you see the evolution of what you think. Arguably, I try to talk about things. I think that's Feynman that was basically saying that when you start being able to explain something, like it means that you have to have understood things deeply to be able to understand things in a simple manner. So trying to talk about it, like just talking with you, I will come back and I would say, hey, Claude, like I was pretty fuzzy there, right? And then I will dig in and try to understand what I was missing and all of that. So trying to have this constant feedback loop, but you only have it if you try to explain. So trying to take like every opportunity to explain things at least works for me.
The feedback loop for doing our own personal work is just fascinating to me right now. I've been trying to explain this to some friends too, like people who work outside of tech, that you need to be spending a lot more work now and a lot more intention building the right personal context or project context or whatever else. And, you know, I find myself even just using the agent to do it, right? I've been telling Cloud Code at the end of a project, reflect back on, you know, what you've done here, write it all to a reflection file, and then incorporate it into a, you know, backlog for this repo for other context we can add for the future, or rule changes we should make to our, you know, agents.md file or whatever it might be, right? It's pretty wild how good it is at coming up with reasonable suggestions and reflections there. And it just makes it that much easier to even build the feedback loop, right? You know, all this stuff's just collapsing.
One of the things that I was like, so you were talking about like non-technical people. The one non-technical thing that I'm doing that is changing the way I operate and I'm efficient in my job. Like I have so everyone has a meeting recorder. So I have like all the meeting recorded. And then for every people that I interact with, I have a set of meetings with them. So then you use whatever you code, ChatGPT, whatever, you bring that content and you say, I'm not efficient enough with that person. We are passing each other. What do you see? And clearly, even if you know that talking to Rahul, which is like very visionary person, you have to talk product, not the how. Like you need to talk product. When I talk with my chief business officer, she cares about the numbers. Of course, I know it. Of course, I know it. But when you have someone that is like, hey, you know it, but like in the last 3-4 meetings with them, you keep insisting on the execution. Talk product, talk business. Like, damn, shoot. So it's having someone that is coaching you all the time. And it's not like mind blowing, but it's so helpful that it's
pragmatic.
It's pragmatic and it works. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I know we're going to be getting close on time. And we could keep riffing. I appreciate, we have so much we could talk about, but maybe like help us close with a few thoughts. If you could go back to when you first started working on AI at Superhuman and give yourself like one or two pieces of advice, what would you say? Anything that like you'd really like, that definitely worked, lean in more there, do that again, or that was a false positive, don't go that way. I'd be curious to hear what your answer is.
Maybe the first one is like choose your providers wisely. And don't assume because it's a big name that the resiliency will be there. That's one. We had to change our vector storage provider because the first one was not an infrastructure player, and it was an application layer. And the way they were driving the business was very SaaS and not very like IaaS.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with the outcome and all, but like probably I should have seen that sooner. Like, oh, those guys, they are not infrastructure players. The people that I talk to, they are not infrastructure players. And we changed night and day. So choosing wisely your partners, and there's a lot, like there's one company every day, like 10 companies every day that are popping up and they pretend to do the same, whether it is evals, whether it is like vector storage, whether it is like, you name it, inference and whatever. Think about like what you're looking for and what you assume they will provide to you. Because if you believe they will be like a stable infrastructure provider, but they believe they are an application layer, you will pass each other and you won't have the outcome you want. So that's probably like the big one. The second one, I will reinforce the fact that this is fun. Don't be afraid. Like this is freaking awesome moment to be alive as engineer and tech leaders. Tech is fun again to some extent.
It's the most fun I've had in a long time. It's awesome.
So yeah, lean in, support the team, I would say, and yeah, that's it. Just enjoy the path because we're living something that is huge.
That seems like a good place to wrap. It's a good thought. And I totally agree. It's a wild time that we're in and it's one of the most fun ever for those of us that are building. So, Loïc, thank you. It's great to see you. Thanks for talking to us about Superhuman and what you all are doing. And it sounds like you've built a really amazing team culture. So I didn't expect anything different, but really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing what you've been up to. Tell us if anybody wants to follow along, what should they know about you, about using Superhuman? Maybe we'll just close there so they can follow up.
You can reach out on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to discuss productivity and all the space, including, Superhuman Mail, but like Superhuman as a whole. Now we're a big family, and there's like more to be done. There's some crazy things happening behind the scene that I'm excited about. So if you're curious, just reach out on LinkedIn. Put a note. I hate when people try to connect but don't provide context. So just like explain why, and happy to keep the conversation going.
Awesome. Loïc, it's great to see you. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me in. Bye.
See you soon.
All right. That's all we have for today's episode of Deployed, the AI Product Podcast. I'm Ian Cairns, CEO and co-founder of FreePlay. I hope you enjoyed listening. And if you did, we'd love to hear about it. Your reviews mean a lot. They help other listeners. So give us a like, share, subscribe, wherever you're listening to this. And if something stood out to you in the episode, or if you've got feedback or ideas for a future episode, or if you simply just want to learn more, we're up to at FreePlay, shoot me a note. I'm Ian at freeplay.ai. You can also find me on Twitter at Cairns. Thanks so much for listening.